Tonight, we're embarking on an incredible journey through one of history's most transformative and darkest times, the Black Death, and exploring how it felt to endure this catastrophic plague. Before we get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the content. Let me know in the comments where you're joining us from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's tuning in from different parts of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just awoken in Europe in the year 1347. The morning air is crisp as you open your eyes and stretch out on a straw-filled mattress. You're not in a private room like you might expect, but in a single-room cottage shared with your family. The walls are made from wattle and daub, essentially a wooden frame filled with a mix of mud, clay, and straw. It does a decent job of keeping out the cold, although the thatched roof leaks during heavy rain. As you rise, your senses are filled with familiar smells: smoke from last night's fire, the earthy aroma of the dirt floor beneath your feet, and the unmistakable scent of bodies unwashed for a while. Bathing isn't a common practice in medieval times, so it's lucky that everyone smells the same. Your stomach rumbles, and if you're fortunate, there may be some leftover bread from the day before. Though it's probably rock hard now, you can soak it in some ale. Yes, even children drink ale back then. It's often safer than water, which could make you terribly ill if drawn from a contaminated source outside the safety of your cottage. Your village is already coming to life. You can hear cattle lowing in the distance, chickens clucking, and neighbors calling to one another as they begin their work. Most people in the village are peasants, working the land as free tenants who pay rent to the local lord, or as serfs bound to the land and required to offer labor services. Life here follows a simple, predictable rhythm. The days revolve around the rise and fall of the sun, the weeks are marked by the church bells calling you to Mass, and the seasons dictate when to plant and harvest. The work is hard, but it's the only life you've ever known. Little do you know, everything is about to change. A shadow is moving across the continent, one that will reshape society in ways no war or famine ever could. The first rumors reach your village from a traveling merchant, who brings exotic goods from far-off lands. This time, however, he brings disturbing news, stories of a sickness that has been devastating cities along the trade routes. People are dying in the thousands, struck down by an illness that causes fever, painful swellings, and almost certain death. Some villagers cross themselves in fear, while others dismiss it as mere exaggeration. After all, rumors spread faster than truth, right? Life continues, but the whispers grow louder and more terrifying each day. By autumn, the sickness has reached Mediterranean ports like Messina, Marseille, and Venice. Ships are arriving, their holds filled with corpses. Sailors have perished on the journey. Your mother, upon hearing the news, murmurs a prayer, crossing herself. In your village, people begin to prepare as best they can, though no one really knows what they're preparing for. Some store extra food, others spend more time in church, praying for protection. The local healer gathers herbs, but no one knows if these remedies will have any effect. The first cases appear in your region during the cold months of winter. A neighboring village reports sudden deaths, victims suffer high fevers, terrible thirst, and develop strange black swellings in their armpits and groins. Few survive longer than 3 days after symptoms appear. The village elders meet, unsure of what to do. Some suggest closing the village to outsiders, while others argue that trade must continue. Life goes on, but now, there's an undercurrent of fear. Then one chilly morning, a young man from the mill fails to show up for work. When someone goes to check on him, they find him burning with fever, covered in sweat, his neck swollen with a painful growth. The plague has arrived in your village. What follows is unimaginable horror. The sickness spreads quickly. One day someone is healthy, and the next day, feverish. By the third day, they are often dead. The black buboes, which give the disease its name, the Black Death, are so painful they're almost beyond description. Some victims cough blood, indicating the disease has reached their lungs, and they rarely last more than a day or two. Some believe it's a punishment from God. They flog themselves, hoping to atone for their sins. Others carry posies of flowers to ward off the bad air they believe causes the disease. Some even accuse the Jews of poisoning the wells, though your village has no Jewish population, and such accusations seem nonsensical. The truth, though, is far more devastating and invisible. The Black Death is caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas that hitch rides on rats. These rats, traveling on ships and in towns, unknowingly spread death across the continents. When an infected flea bites a human, it regurgitates bacteria into the wound. The bacteria then multiply quickly, causing painful swelling in the lymph nodes, those dreaded buboes. The disease spreads further, and no one seems able to stop it. Your village, like many others, is transformed by the plague. The church bells that once rang to mark the hours now toll constantly for the dead. Eventually, there are too many deaths for the bells to announce, and they fall silent. The dead are buried quickly and with little ceremony, no more elaborate funeral rites. Bodies are taken on carts to mass graves. Fear changes how people treat one another. Families with healthy members may bar their doors to outsiders, while those with sick relatives often find themselves avoided. Some flee to the countryside, hoping distance will protect them. Others turn to religion, processing through the streets, flagellating themselves in hopes of appeasing divine wrath. The priests, who should offer comfort, are themselves dying in alarming numbers. Their duties require them to administer last rites to the dying, constantly exposing themselves to the disease. Many flee, abandoning their flocks in this time of need. Those who stay often succumb to the plague. Your family has been lucky, though. None of your immediate household has fallen ill, but you've heard stories of entire families being wiped out, of children orphaned only to die soon after. Yet, you know that your luck can't last forever. One morning, your younger brother complains of feeling unwell. By midday, he's burning with fever. By evening, the unmistakable swelling appears at his neck, and you know what it means. Your mother tends to him day and night, bathing his fevered brow with cool cloths and trying to get him to drink small sips of water or weak ale. Your father speaks of taking him to the monastery where monks treat the sick, but everyone knows the monasteries are overwhelmed. For 3 days, your brother's condition worsens, the bubo grows larger, turning a painful red. After the bubo turns black, your brother's condition finally improves. Against all odds, he survives, one of the few lucky enough to make it through the plague. There's no scientific explanation at the time, but modern science later reveals that certain individuals carry a genetic mutation that provides protection against the plague bacterium. This mutation, called delta 32, makes it harder for the bacteria to infiltrate the immune system. Your brother might be one of the fortunate ones who inherited this mutation, offering him a measure of resistance. Despite your brother's miraculous recovery, your village remains in turmoil. The plague continues to take its toll, decimating families and entire communities. The survivors are left to rebuild from the ashes of a world forever changed. Over time, the survivors will learn to adapt, and life will begin to regain a sense of normalcy, albeit a new normal. The peasants, once bound to the land, begin to negotiate better terms with the local lords. The nobility, weakened by the loss of their servants and workers, struggle to maintain control. The world that emerges from the Black Death will be one of change, social, political, and economic. A world where people begin to question the old ways and search for new opportunities. In the aftermath of the plague, the feudal system begins to crumble, and the survivors must navigate a shifting landscape, where power dynamics are no longer as rigid as they once were. For now, though, life continues. As your family regains some semblance of normalcy, you begin to look to the future, a future shaped by survival, resilience, and an understanding that, despite the horrors of the past, humanity has a remarkable ability to endure. And while you can never forget the Black Death, you know that it is the strength of those who lived through it that will ultimately help build a new world. As time passes, your brother's breathing grows more strained, and he cries out, racked with both pain and feverish confusion. You take turns watching over him, but fear creeps in, and you long to keep your distance. On the fourth day, something unexpected occurs. While most victims of the plague deteriorate and die by this stage, your brother's fever begins to break. Though he's still weak, his mind remains alert. The swollen lump under his skin remains, but it's no longer as hard as before. Over the next few days, the swelling begins to soften, and it eventually ruptures, draining away what had seemed like certain death. It's a repulsive, yet strangely encouraging sign. Against all odds, your brother might be one of the few to survive this harrowing ordeal. You can't understand why your brother is still here while so many others have perished. Modern scientists, centuries from now, will later discover the key reason. A rare genetic mutation known as Delta 32, which provides some protection against the bacteria responsible for the Black Death. This mutation alters a protein on the surface of white blood cells, making it harder for the plague-causing bacteria to enter and hijack the body's immune system. Your brother may carry this mutation, as could others in your family. This fortuitous genetic trait would allow certain individuals to survive, while countless others fall. In the years that follow, it will be discovered that this same genetic mutation helps protect against HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, another terrible scourge to come centuries later. The genetic advantage, though beneficial for those who survive, would cost millions of lives in the process. Yet, this mutation will shape the course of history in ways you can't imagine, ensuring some descendants of those who survived the Black Death will carry it for generations. But for now, your family celebrates your brother's miraculous recovery. However, not everyone is so fortunate. As the weeks slip by, the plague continues its unrelenting destruction. Your village, which once boasted about 200 residents, has dwindled to fewer than 100. Fields remain untended, as those who would tend them are either deceased or too consumed by the task of burying their loved ones or caring for the sick. Even the lord of the manor, residing in a stone house on a hill overlooking the village, has lost his wife and 2 children. wealth and status offer no protection from the plague's wrath. A strange thing begins to occur. Some people seem impervious to the plague, despite constant exposure. The village gravedigger, a grim figure who robs the dead before he buries them, handles bodies ravaged by the disease daily, yet remains unscathed. Similarly, a midwife, who spends her time tending to the sick or delivering babies, never shows signs of illness either. Like your brother, they may possess that genetic advantage. But in a world steeped in superstition, many attribute their survival to divine intervention, or darker forces, whispers of which fill the air. Meanwhile, the food supply becomes scarce as harvests are abandoned and trade slows. The price of essential goods skyrockets, and anything that might be seen as a potential cure, exotic herbs, mysterious remedies, religious relics, becomes a luxury item, expensive and rare. As winter approaches, the plague starts to recede, not due to any intervention from humans, but simply because the colder weather reduces the activity of fleas and forces rats to huddle together in their nests. For a brief moment, there is a glimmer of hope that the worst is behind you. But that hope is short-lived. The Black Death retreats, only to return when the warmth of spring awakens it once again. New victims are found among those who survived the first wave. The plague will continue its rampage across Europe, with successive waves from 1347 to 1351. By the time it's done, between 75 and 200 million people, perhaps half of Europe's entire population, will have died. The world that emerges from this catastrophe will be irreversibly transformed. The huge population decline disrupts the established feudal system, increasing the value of labor and shifting the power dynamics between peasants and the nobility. People begin to question religious authority, wondering why their prayers went unanswered and why so many priests abandoned their posts in the face of the disease. Medical knowledge, which has been rooted in ancient traditions and superstition, will be confronted by the plague's defiance of these old treatments. For those who survive, like your brother, the gravedigger, and the midwife, life will never return to what it was. They are the fortunate ones, carrying the weight of survival in a world steeped in loss. Over time, they will rebuild societies, renegotiate their relationships with authority, and gradually shape the post-plague world. This world will set Europe on a path toward modernity, for better or worse. But that, as they say, is a story for another night. For now, imagine yourself as one of those medieval survivors, staring up at the first stars appearing in the night sky above your village. The plague has passed, for now, and you stand on the precipice of a new world, one born from the ashes of the old. The soft sounds of your breathing blend with the night, the distant barking of a dog, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Despite the unimaginable loss and suffering, life continues. In that simple fact lies perhaps the most important lesson of the Black Death, humanity's remarkable capacity to endure, to adapt, and to ultimately carry on. The day after your brother's miraculous recovery, a strange mix of emotions swells within you. Relief fills your heart, but there's also a nagging sense of wonder. Why were you spared while so many others perished? It's a feeling you've come to recognize as survivor's guilt. The feeling of unworthiness that often haunts those who outlive catastrophes. Your brother, though still weak, is alert now. His eyes, once clouded by illness, are clear for the first time in days. The scar from the black swelling on his neck will mark him forever, a constant reminder of his brush with death. But a scar is a small price to pay compared to the alternative, a grave. Your family treats each day of his recovery as the gift it is. One evening, he asks in a raspy voice, "Why did I survive when so many others died?" Your mother, lighting a rush candle as darkness falls, pauses for a moment before answering, "God's will," she says simply, though her tone betrays uncertainty. The truth, though, is far more complex than anyone in the 14th century could comprehend. Throughout human history, infectious diseases have acted as powerful forces of natural selection. Those with genetic advantages against specific pathogens survive at higher rates, passing on these protective traits to future generations. The Black Death is one of the most dramatic examples of this process. Deep in your brother's cells, and perhaps yours as well, lies a genetic mutation known as Delta 32. This mutation alters a protein on the surface of white blood cells, making it more difficult for the plague-causing bacterium to enter and hijack immune cells. Some people carry one copy of this mutation, offering partial protection, while others, like your brother, have two copies, providing substantial resistance. But such evolutionary advantages come at a cost, measured in millions of lives lost. Those without the mutation succumb to the plague, and the survivors, though grateful for their genetic lottery, are forever changed by the tremendous loss they've witnessed. As your brother recovers and ventures outside for the first time since his illness, you notice the dramatic changes in your village. Gardens that once thrived are now overrun with wild growth. Houses stand empty, abandoned by those who have died or fled. The rhythmic sounds of daily life, the blacksmith's hammer, the weaver's loom, the miller's wheel, are absent. Yet amidst this desolation, signs of resilience begin to emerge. A market day is organized, smaller than before but filled with the energy of survivors determined to carry on. Farmers from the surrounding area bring what produce they can still harvest, and a brave merchant arrives with salt, spices, and news from distant lands. The news is much the same everywhere: devastation, followed by slow recovery. No place has been spared, although some have fared better than others. Cities, with their crowded conditions and poor sanitation, have suffered most. But small, isolated villages, tucked away in mountains or deep within forests, have fared better, although few places remain untouched by the plague. In your region, half of the population has perished. In some areas, the toll is even higher. He speaks of empty towns, places completely abandoned, of silent monasteries where monks died alone, of noble lines erased, their estates empty. But he also speaks of places where life still carries on, of people helping one another, supporting widows, raising orphans, sharing food. One story stays with you. In a village much like your own, a woman named Elizabeth lost her husband and all 6 of her children to the plague in just 1 week. She brought each of their bodies to a hill behind their house and buried them by hand. Yet even after all that exposure, Elizabeth never got sick. Like your brother and the man who digs graves, she seemed to carry some kind of resistance, what scientists many years later would call genetic immunity. They say she's a witch, the merchant tells you in a hush, though no one is nearby. How else can she handle corpses and not fall ill? Some tried to drown her in the village pond, but most were simply thankful to have someone brave enough to bury the dead. In such troubled times, whispers like these are everywhere. Anyone who survives the disease, especially women living alone or people with odd habits, may be blamed for dark sorcery. Fear grows fast in days of death. Your father, listening silently to the traveler's stories, finally speaks. Survival is not magic, he says. Some people are just stronger. He places a firm hand on your brother's shoulder with pride. The merchant nods, not wanting to disagree with someone who might be a customer. True, he says. Every village has those the plague cannot reach. Maybe they're blessed. As winter settles in, your village begins a new rhythm. Fewer mouths mean more food per person, a small blessing. But with so many gone, there are also fewer hands to do vital work, repairing homes, tending livestock, gathering wood. This shortage of labor slowly changes the balance between poor villagers and the landowners. Your father, a skilled woodworker, finds himself in sudden demand. The local lord, who once gave orders without question, now negotiates with him directly. He offered a silver coin for 3 days' labor, your father tells your mother one night, still surprised. And a chunk of bacon. Such rewards were unheard of before. But now, with many craftsmen dead, those left are valued like never before. The changes ripple outward. Farmhands once easy to replace now ask for better wages. Servants with skills to run large households are quickly hired by nobles left without staff. Women, too, find new doors open. Widows no longer rush to remarry, they run their late husbands' shops instead. Rules that once banned them from trades now bend out of need. In a nearby town, a woman takes over her husband's forge. People whisper, but she keeps the fires lit, and no one else can. For peasants tied by law to the land, the plague offers freedom. Lords need their fields worked, and they offer liberty to those who agree to stay. Part 4, Characters 3001 to 4000. Some peasants simply walk away, heading for towns or other villages with less sickness and better pay, no longer afraid of being chased back. There are too few people left to enforce old laws. Change doesn't happen overnight, the feudal order won't vanish in a season, but seeds are planted now that will grow in the years ahead. Your own family adjusts as best it can. Your brother regains his strength, though he tires more easily than before. Your father earns better wages than ever. Your mother takes laundry work from the manor for higher pay, now that labor is scarce. Even you find new chances. The priest, one of the few who stayed behind during the worst days, needs help keeping church records. Your mother once served in a noble home and taught you to read and write, a rare gift among peasants. So you take the job. When spring comes, it brings hope. Flowers bloom. Crops rise. Birds return. But also fear, the warm air may bring the plague again. Part 5, Characters 4001 to 5000. And sure enough, by summer's start, more people fall ill. This wave isn't as deadly as the first. There are fewer left to infect, and some may have resistance. Still, each death cuts deep. One day, as you help the priest update the long parish death list, you ask a question that's been troubling you: why did God send this plague? The priest, old and worn from months of loss, pauses. Some say it's punishment for our sins, he says. Others think it's a test. The Pope has called for prayers and fasting to end it. He adds another name to the list with a sigh. But I've seen kind people suffer horribly, and cruel ones survive. I've prayed over children as they slipped away. He looks at the ink-stained page. Perhaps we're not meant to know the reason. His words echo what many feel. The plague doesn't follow any rule. If it's God's punishment, why do the wicked thrive? If prayer is the answer, why do holy people die? Even monasteries full of prayer lose nearly all their monks. The Church, once seen as the great guide in times of crisis, begins to look weaker. Trust cracks. And not just in faith, medicine suffers, too. Learned doctors, trained at great schools, seem no better at saving lives than local healers with herbs and instincts. Their theories of humors and stars explain little. Why do some fall while others recover? Why does one village survive and another vanish? Some doctors do their duty and treat the sick, even at great risk. Others flee at the first sign of illness, choosing to save themselves. Those who stay often dress in strange gear, long robes, gloves, and a mask shaped like a bird's beak, stuffed with herbs to clean the air. That odd outfit, which will become a symbol in future outbreaks, does almost nothing to stop the plague. Without real cures, people try their own ways to stay safe. Some wear charms, avoid redheads, or shun black cats. Others take smarter steps. They burn the clothes of the dead, wash more often, or separate the sick. These actions don't fully stop the illness, but they help. Your village adopts its own rules. Houses hit by plague are marked with white crosses. Outsiders must spend 3 days in a waiting hut to see if they're healthy. The dead are buried quickly, with few prayers, and their things burned. These steps help, but they can't stop the sickness entirely. By the middle of summer, a dozen more villagers have died from this second wave. It's a heavy blow. Your community was already hurt deeply the year before. The losses pile on, and sadness grows heavier. Still, life must go on. The fields need tending, the animals fed, the roofs patched. Children must be watched. Water hauled. With fewer hands, everyone works more. But amid it all, people notice the changes. Social lines blur. Old rules weaken. Hope rises, slowly, painfully, but it rises. The land is still dangerous, but the people who remain grow stronger in spirit. New voices begin to be heard, widows, freed serfs, and clever youth. The village feels different. Evenings are quieter, but filled with reflection. Some dream of a world less cruel than the one before. Others simply hold their loved ones a little closer. The priest continues his work, his faith shaken but intact. He teaches you more, trusting your help. Your father plans to build a new shed before winter. Your mother smiles more often now, proud of how you've grown. Your brother carves toys for the neighbor's children. The merchant returns one day, bringing stories again, this time, of towns rebuilding, of feasts held in memory of the lost, of music in the streets. The world is scarred, but not broken. In the stillness after grief, something else begins to grow. Not just recovery, but change. And though the past can never return, the future now feels possible. One of the victims is the estate master himself. A man in his 50s, he had survived the first wave of the plague but ultimately succumbed to the second. His passing sends shockwaves through the local social structure. His son, just 20 years old and freshly returned from Paris, inherits not only the manor but also its lands. This new young lord, influenced by the progressive ideas he encountered during his education, chooses a new path for managing the estate. Understanding the scarcity of labor and the shifting dynamics of power, he offers better terms to tenant farmers and serfs willing to stay and work. These serfs are granted freedom and better rents. Those with specialized skills, like your father, are offered privileges that were once reserved for the higher classes. However, not all nobles are quick to adapt. In neighboring manors, some lords respond by enforcing older restrictions with increased harshness. They forbid peasants from leaving, punish those who demand higher wages, and try to uphold the old order through force. But such efforts rarely succeed for long. Peasants leave in search of better opportunities elsewhere. With an abundance of land and a shortage of workers, these peasants find ample chances for a new life. By the time autumn arrives, the second wave of the plague begins to subside. Your village, though greatly diminished, has survived. Of the original 200 residents, only about 90 remain. The most fertile lands are now prioritized for cultivation, and many houses have been abandoned. Their timbers and thatch are gradually scavenged for other uses. Despite the tragedy, life begins to normalize. Children start playing in the village square again, and the cycles of planting, tending, and harvesting continue. With fewer workers, the pace has slowed, but weddings still happen, babies are born, and commerce resumes. One day, an unexpected visitor arrives. A mason who had left years ago to seek work in the cities. He had made a good life for himself in Florence, working on the Grand Cathedral. However, when the plague struck, it ravaged the city worse than any rural area. I watched half of Florence die, he says, his eyes filled with the memories. The wealthy fled to their country estates, leaving the poor behind, with bodies piling in the streets faster than they could be buried. I survived, God knows how, he continues, explaining how after the worst passed, work on the cathedral ceased. With so many dead, priorities shifted to essential rebuilding. His story is far from unique. Throughout Europe, the plague led to a temporary reversal of urbanization. Cities, with their crowded living conditions, became perfect breeding grounds for disease. Many survivors fled to the countryside, seeking safety in open spaces. This urban exodus brought unexpected benefits to rural villages. People returned, bringing with them new skills, ideas, and perspectives gained in the cities. They shared stories of different ways of living, technological innovations, and political systems unlike the feudal structures of rural areas. For example, the Mason explains how Florence was governed not by hereditary nobles, but by elected officials from the merchant class. He talks about mechanical clocks that divide the day into precise hours, water management systems that provide clean water, and banking practices that enable trade across vast distances. These ideas found fertile ground in communities already questioning traditional authorities and practices. The plague had created cracks in the medieval worldview, and through those cracks, new possibilities emerged. For your family, life continues in this new world. Your brother, fully recovered but scarred by the plague, begins apprenticing with the mason. The skilled craft he learns will secure his future in a world where such expertise is increasingly valuable. Your father's carpentry work keeps the family comfortable, earning wages that would have been unimaginable before the plague. Your mother no longer takes in washing but instead focuses on an herb garden that produces remedies in high demand. Since the plague wiped out many traditional healers, her skills are now more valuable than ever. You continue assisting the priest with parish records. Your literacy and quick mind make you a valuable member of the community, where such skills are rare. In the old world, your peasant birth would have limited your prospects, but in the post-plague world, with its shifting social boundaries and a desperate need for talent, opportunities are more abundant. One evening, as your family gathers around the hearth, sharing a meal more plentiful than anything you'd hoped for before the plague, your father says something that's been on everyone's mind. "It's a terrible thing to say," he begins hesitantly, "but for those of us who survived, life is better now than before." Your mother nods slowly, agreeing, more food, better pay, more freedom. But, as they both acknowledge, it is all built on countless graves. This is the uncomfortable paradox at the heart of the post-plague world. For those fortunate enough to survive, whether through genetic luck like your brother, circumstantial fortune, or isolation from infection sources, the new world offers advantages the old one could never have provided. The massive reduction in population has created opportunities for social advancement, economic improvement, and personal freedom. These benefits were unthinkable in the crowded, rigidly hierarchical pre-plague society. Yet, these advantages come at an unimaginable cost: the lives of millions, the destruction of families, communities torn apart, and the loss of knowledge and culture carried by those who perished. As you drift off to sleep that night, you can't help but wonder about the future. The plague has receded for now, but no one believes it's gone for good. It will return, as it has before, bringing in. What you don't yet know is that you stand at a pivotal moment in history. The world emerging from the ashes of the Black Death will be fundamentally different from what came before. The seeds of the Renaissance are being planted in the years of recovery, and the rigid feudal system is beginning its slow, inevitable decline. The unquestioned authority of traditional power structures, both secular and religious, has been shaken. Biologically, the plague has reshaped the human species, selecting for genetic traits that will influence health and disease resistance for generations to come. Your brother's survival, far from being mere luck, marks a significant chapter in humanity's ongoing struggle with the microscopic organisms that both sustain and threaten us. Tomorrow, as a new day dawns in your changed world, you'll continue the work of rebuilding, adapting, and finding a way forward. This is what plague survivors have always done throughout history. Carrying the weight of memory while facing toward the future, reshaping the world in ways that will echo through centuries to come. Test imaginable one destined to inscribe their village name into history and immortalize their shared sacrifice in legend. The plague has returned to England and London, the illness that people still call the Black Death, though we now identify it as bubonic plague, is cutting a lethal path through the packed streets of the capital. By the time it ends, it will kill an estimated 100,000 Londoners, nearly a quarter of the city's population. This outbreak will be remembered as the Great Plague of London, the